Welcome, everybody. How's everybody doing? Happy Friday. Well, this week, good week for conservatives. Don't know if you saw, but we had the third rating agency do a positive outlook for Oklahoma. So all the groundwork we've laid, all the conservative policies we've done, our savings account, our slowing the growth of government, trying to do that best we can, the economic outlook. And so that's really a good positive sign. So we've gone to New York several times. We've had those rating agencies come down here to Oklahoma to meet with us. And that helps anytime we go out for bonding, for construction projects, for roads and bridges. And so that was really good news that we got all three of them to give Oklahoma a positive rating, which obviously affects our interest costs when we have big projects. We also had Board of Equalization meet, which was also another really good positive sign. We had another growth year in revenue collections for the state. And that's why it's so important for me to think about, let's give some of that back to the taxpayer. Let's do something for the taxpayer. Let's not just keep figuring out ways to grow government in this building. There's always things to do, and I get that. But there are families, working families in Oklahoma that are being harmed with inflation, and so let's give them some relief right now. We've done a lot of investing over the last couple of years. We need to give Oklahomans a tax cut, and I was really excited to see Pro Tem Treat's statement. So I think that the Senate is moving in that direction. Pro Tem Treat released a statement regarding grocery tax, and it's something we called in for a special session. Asking for grocery tax, maybe last year or the year before, something that we've been promoting. We think that's a very regressive tax. We think that would help a lot of people in the low income bracket. And there's already a bill that's ready to go. It's got an emergency clause on it. Literally, that bill could be taken up and voted on. It's already in the Senate, could be on my desk next week. So that would be awesome. I think we can still do a quarter of a point, which is also in the Senate. We could take that up and vote on it during special session. The House has passed that. Special session is still open for the Senate. They can take both those up. Bam, be on my desk next week. Let's get that going. That'd be great. The other thing, we haven't released it yet, but General Mancino has let us know that we're number one in the country in recruiting now, National Guard members. And so that's really, really a positive sign. It's something I've been working on since 2019 to prioritize and to let young people know the opportunity in the Oklahoma National Guard. And then when you get out of active duty and you're moving back to Oklahoma, we want you joining the Oklahoma National Guard. There's a huge benefit to our state economically, but also it's a way that you can give back to your country and stay involved. So now we've got 2 recruiters, I think, that are ranked number 1 in the country, and we'll get you more information on that as well. So with that, let me just open it up to questions, comments, what you'd like to hear more about.
Both the grocery tax cut bill and the personal income tax bill make it to your desk, would you sign both?
100%.
Okay. So you feel like the state is financially ready to have both of those cuts?
Yeah, let me show you this chart real quick. Here's the spending. Spending from 2010 to last year, we spent $12.96 billion. Here's the growth. This other line is really important to know. That's our population growth. This is unsustainable. We need to slow the growth of government. We can't figure out, since we have more money this year, we can't just figure out how to keep this line up. This will get us in more trouble than anything. We need to slow this back down. Now, some of this was one-time monies. We don't have this much obligation if we take out what we call the legacy fund. If we take out, here you go. If we take out, there was a $200 million investment for, housing and to encourage developers. But we absolutely can afford that. And slowing the growth of government is something that you hear me talk about all the time.
You mentioned housing, and I know you signed that bill last year for the program to incentivize additional housing. You approved the emergency rule, or the permanent rule process. Tulsa itself, where you have roots, has announced some efforts to rebuild some public housing. What is your opinion these days of how the situation looks for Oklahoma?
Well, I don't know, did I sign it or I let it go into law?
That's right. Well, I don't know. You may have, well, you tell me, what was your thinking?
Yeah, no, I think I probably let it go into law. Listen, again, that's the legislature passed that. It's law. But the best way to have more housing is to deregulate, to make sure that entrepreneurs, the free market is the best system to have. People are going to meet the needs if you make it easy to develop and to build housing. So we need to look at ourselves in the mirror in our municipalities and what are we doing to allow and encourage low-income houses and entry-level houses to be developed and be built. Sometimes it's lot sizes that some communities are pushing back on lot sizes. You hear that from a lot of entry-level builders. Labor force is something. So I want the states to be able to control more H-1B visas. So we know we can actually authorize the right amount of workforce in our state. So to me, that's the way you solve these problems. Government coming in and passing some law that says we're going to somehow take money and figure out ways to build more houses. The free market does that.
In addition to the House bill for the grocery tax that's sitting in the Senate, the Pro Tem has introduced his own grocery tax bill. What do you think is the better process to go for commercial? The new one or the old one?
Well, I think they're relatively the same. The one that's already sitting in the Senate would be much quicker. It's got an emergency clause on it. I understand. The one that Pro Tem Treats rolled out, I don't think it has an emergency clause, so it wouldn't go into effect to Oklahomans as fast. So if we want relief now, it seems like the one that's already in the Senate doesn't have to go through committees. Literally, it can be taken up and voted on next week and be on my desk. Also, I think it's important. The one bill that's ready to go also has a moratorium from municipalities just increasing their tax rate to fill the gap. And that's not what we want either. We really want this relief to the Oklahomans. So it puts a moratorium on a municipality filling that difference and that gap. So listen, I'm encouraged because he's talking about that, but let's just do it. I mean, we can get that done next week. So that would be my suggestion.
Senator Treat said yesterday that he didn't think the math added up for us to afford both tax cuts. So if we can only have one, would you be disappointed? A, B, which would you prefer, and which of the tax cuts do you think Oklahomans would prefer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would prefer, I think long term, my job is to try to grow the state and make us the most business friendly state. And I would prefer to have an income tax cut, get us down to zero. I called for a 75 basis points cut last year. And then there's other ways to help the low income folks through, there's already, it's a tax credit on grocery tax. So we could expand that and not do a whole, across the board elimination of the grocery tax. You could do just for under a certain income level. They could get a credit back on their tax returns for grocery tax. So that's also a possibility. But I do think we can afford both of them. And I think the grocery tax overall is a regressive tax. And people have to buy groceries. And so it's going to hurt the people in the low income bracket the most. We're one of only 12 states, and I say it all the time, that taxes groceries. So I would love to be able to eliminate that. But if I had to choose, I would say the income tax, because that's going every single person in the state. And I know how business friendly that is. And that actually is going to help education. It's going to help infrastructure. It's going to help workforce. It's going to help quality of life, because we're going to have more and more businesses moving here. And if you might remember, and I didn't bring the chart with me, but if you look at the area around us and what Nebraska is just cutting taxes and Arkansas and Iowa, we have to stay up with our region to be the most business friendly state. And so again, if we do nothing and we keep growing government the way we have, and we figure out new government programs, we're going to be in a bad situation in a few years.
The second Pro Tem said earlier this week, though, comparing what the personal income tax would do and the grocery tax cut, he said the grocery tax cut would help Oklahomans 5.5 times more than the personal income tax cut. So what's your response to that?
Put it on my desk. Vote on it next week. You guys all know if I could write the bills, it had already been done last year. But put it on my desk. Love it. That'd be fantastic. He's got it. All they got to do is put it up on the board. It could be on my desk next week. And I'm glad he's saying that. I'm glad he's talking about the relief. And if it can help Oklahomans, put it on my desk. That's what our jobs are.
Kind of in the same ballpark of that, we reached out to your office yesterday asking for comments on a different bill that Pro Tem has introduced. It's going through committee and passed. It would basically mandate that you have to communicate with state leaders when and if you know that you're going to leave the state. I was told that your office doesn't comment on pending legislation, but you talked about the bill with the grocery tax. You talked about the bill that Dusty Devers has brought up with criminalizing women who get abortions. So, like, which is it? Do you comment on pending legislation or do you not?
Yeah, I'm not going to specifically talk about any bills, but I'll tell you my thoughts. I have no problem. That's why I'm up here. So do you have a specific question for me?
The question that I had yesterday is what your perspective would be on that bill that the Pro Tem has introduced.
Yeah, so no problem at all. We communicate. My chief of staff is always in communicate with his chief of staff. And even I think what you're talking about is last year when I was recruiting companies and I was in Paris at the Paris Air Show. And you got to remember this, and I've said this multiple times. I'm the governor if I'm down in Houston making a speech like I was last week with Governor Abbott to the oil and gas industry, or I was in Paris recruiting companies. I'm the governor. I was in communication the entire time with the OG&E CEO and on Zoom calls, and we do communicate. So further clarification, further sending some letter, no problem at all. Whatever we want. But basically, just so Oklahomans know, there's laws because our Constitution was written in 1907. We didn't have cell phones, and the governor would be gone for a month on horse and buggy to Washington, D.C. in 1907 with no communications. And so that's why those laws, and a lot of states have those, they're updating them now, that would say, hey, if the governor's gone for a month on a horse and buggy somewhere between here and Washington, D.C., we got to know who's in charge in the state. And that's why the law's in place for the lieutenant governor. With technology today, it's such an outdated law. We wrote the executive order. We found Pinnell was, I think, in Georgia at the time. And so we sent that to Treat and said, hey, sign this. And if you don't want to, if you're not comfortable signing it, no problem. We'll get a flight back. Treat was already, Pinnell was working on a flight back. But thankfully he signed the draft that we put together for him so we could relieve some of the requirements from our OG&E and some of the resources that come into the state to fix down power lines. And so that's what it is. And so I'm not sure if there's politics being played, but we have no problem further clarifying and having a letter. But if we want to fix the problem, we just simply take away that outdated rule and let's fix that. But those are constitutional changes that have to go to the vote of the people. And we've just never, I guess, put that to a vote of the people at this point.
You call for flat budgets in your state of the state address. Folks want to invest more in education this year and therefore spend more. How do you balance that, keeping a flat budget while also trying to improve Oklahoma's standing in the education sphere?
Yeah, great question. Well, listen, these are all complicated. These are tough decisions, and the legislature has a tough decision to try to say we want to invest in this and not this program. We invested big time last year. It was about 20% increase in public education. I think they had a big increase in higher ed last year. And it's a zero-sum game at the end of the day. And I try to remind people that if we spend every dime we have every year, then we're going to be in a bad situation. It's really not tax cuts that ultimately hurt you. It's unrestricted spending that's going to hurt you in the end. And you're just going to keep raising those base level base level expense numbers. And again, we want to be top 10 in education, but we also, my job is to be fiscally conservative, talk about these things with Oklahomans. And the challenge I have with higher ed is that they're still funding the exact same universities the exact same way. And I'll give you a couple of examples. I don't want to pick on specific universities, but there's universities, 2-year colleges, 4-year colleges, regional colleges that have declining enrollment. So declining enrollment, you're not graduating as many kids. Should Oklahoma taxpayers continue to give them increases? So there's cases where you've given $1 million increase to a university with declining enrollment. Well, that's not very smart, is it? Let's fund success. Let's fund programs that we want. Let's fund things that are getting kids ready for the workforce. and let's have some of these conversations. Technology is disrupting higher education, and as long as we keep increasing funding every year, you never have these honest conversations with what do we actually need in the state of Oklahoma.
Governor, have you or your administration counted noses in the Senate to see if you could put 25 votes on the board for a tax cut, whether it's grocery or income?
Have I counted votes in the Senate? No, haven't counted votes in the Senate. They don't like me getting involved in the Senate politics. So you'll have to ask Pro Tem Treat, but I'm assuming Pro Tem Treat has the votes because he's talking about the tax cuts and I guess you said that he said that it's going to help inflation by 5 times or something. That's awesome. Let's put that on the board. Let's get that to my desk next week and give Oklahomans the relief that they need.
Were you surprised that Attorney General dismissed the class lawsuit?
I really was. There's 5,500 vendors in the state of Oklahoma that we pay, and we're going to hold all of them accountable. As long as I'm governor, I want to hold these vendors accountable. And so our teams, we're looking at our options there. But this is a straight contract law case. And back in my auditing class at Oklahoma State, you follow the money. And when the state has a contract with this vendor, and it's a contract case, and we want to hold that vendor accountable. And so it's really a head scratcher why the Attorney General doesn't want to hold that vendor accountable and wants to dismiss these cases.
Didn't he tell you in the letter that was what he was going to do if you did that, though?
If I did what?
If you thought again, he would say, I'll intervene and dismiss it. He told you that in the letter, didn't he, before you don't file?
He may have. He's in more communication with my general counsel that's working on those things. But that's the thing that you really can't, like, for example, if we offered the very first time for the Attorney General to sue this vendor, and the Attorney General declined coverage, then came out publicly and said he doesn't want to do it and doesn't like the case and blah, blah, blah. Well, if I'm the client, if I represent the state of Oklahoma, and then I file a lawsuit against a vendor to hold them accountable, then I can't have an attorney come in and force his way in, take over a case, and then dismiss it. So this will be figured out who has the right to defend the state of Oklahoma. We obviously have refiled that, and our team, Trevor Pemberton, does an amazing job. So I don't know exactly what the communication is between him and the Attorney General's office. But again, I'm sure he has his reasons, but the point is the state wired money to a vendor to administer a program. It's a straight contract law case. This happens all the time in business. They're going to say they did everything right. We know that they didn't. So that's why you litigate it. We'll keep you updated on that. I know Trevor's looking at his options on that and who has the right. The Attorney General's dismissed this case twice on trying to hold this vendor accountable. It's a head scratcher. If a vendor took money from the state and is supposed to administer a program and they administered it incorrectly according to our internal audit, then we're going to hold them accountable. As long as I'm governor, I don't know how much clearer I can be. I think every Oklahoman would expect me to do that. And we're going to do that. I mean, we're going to protect and we're going to be transparent with the taxpayer dollars. And if somebody messes up, you follow the money and you hold that vendor accountable.
Governor, are you concerned about the timing on this potential tax cut? You've called multiple special sessions. The House has passed multiple tax cuts that are alive. Are you concerned that it could take until May to get the tax cut?
I sure hope not. Again, if you're truthful about giving Oklahomans a tax cut and it's on your desk, why wait till May? Let's give them relief right now. The bills are sitting there ready to be voted on in the Senate. The House has passed them in special session. They passed them last year. The grocery tax is sitting there. The quarter of a point sitting there. There's several bills that are sitting there that literally put you on a path to zero. So as revenue goes up, you actually give part of that back to Oklahomans. Tennessee did that exact same bill. Did you know Tennessee wasn't always a zero income tax state, but a few years ago, they put a bill in place that as we have excess revenue above expenses, okay, we modestly raise government spending, but the rest of it goes back to the taxpayers. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just simply putting Oklahoma on a path to zero. Yeah, I mean, there's no absolutely zero reason this should take till May.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank y'all.